Good morning, students. So today we are going to start our next topic, and our next topic is parasitism from population interactions of chapter 14, that is organisms and populations. So student, what is parasitism? Parasitism is a kind of population interaction in which one individual or one organism it acts as a parasite, whereas the other organism is host. So always remember, a parasite always needs a host for its survival. And the parasite also cause harm to the host organism. The parasite is never be the well-wisher of the host organism. So parasitism have evolved in many taxonomic groups, from plants to higher vertebrates. And always remember, many parasites, they have evolved to be host specific. This means these parasites, they live only in a single host. And in this way, both the host and the parasite, they tend to co-evolve. This means if the host evolve a special mechanism for rejecting or for resisting the parasite, then the parasite is also very clever. And he also evolved many mechanisms to counteract and to neutralize, and in order to be successful within the same host species. So here you are familiar with one example of the Anopheles mosquito, which generally picks some blood from your body. But here the Anopheles mosquito is not a parasite. This Anopheles mosquito, it acts as a vector for the parasite, and that parasite is actually Plasmodium, whose various stages of reproduction it is generally takes place in its primary host, and his primary host is human or man. A student, I want to tell you more about these host and parasite. In accordance with the host lifestyle, what the parasite do, the parasite also evolved some special type of adaptations within his body, such as loss of unnecessary sense organs. Very less number of sense organs are present in their body. No unnecessary sense organs are there. Then presence of the adhesive organs. With the help of these adhesive organs, the parasite, they cling themselves with the body of the host. Then they have specialized organs called suckers. And with the help of these suckers, they continuously suck blood from the body of the host organism as well as attach themselves with the host body. Yes, here the digestive system is also not developed in the body of the parasite, because the parasite do not need it, because it is totally dependent on the host organism for obtaining their food. But one very important thing is the parasite has a high reproductive capacity. They reproduce at maximum number in the host body to get more and more nourishment from the host body and to make harm to the host body. Okay, student, the life cycle of parasite, it is quite complex, and sometimes it involved one or two intermediate hosts or vectors to facilitate the parasitization of its primary host. Here I want to give you the example of human liver fluke, and this liver fluke, which is technically known as Phasacola hepatica, it depends upon two intermediate hosts. One is a snail and another is a fish to complete its entire life cycle. Then malarial parasite, which is known as Plasmodium, it also needs a vector. This is Anopheles mosquito to spread the disease to the other host. So human here is the primary host, and the Anopheles mosquito here acts as the vector for the spread of this parasite, which is known as malarial parasite Plasmodium. A student, here one picture is visible to you, that a parasite always cause a harm to the body of the host. It weakens the body of the host, it reduces its reproductive ability as well as other metabolic activities. Yes, majority of the parasites, they harm the host organism. Not only harm the host organism, they also reduced the survival rate of the host organism. growth activities, they are not properly done in the body of the host, and the reproductive ability of the host organism, it also keep on reducing. So in this way, what happened? The population density of the host organism, it keeps on decreasing day by day. The parasite might render the host more vulnerable to other predators because this parasite makes the host physically weak. So this host organism, it can be easily vulnerable to other predators too. Then we know that whether the parasite, it lives on the outer surface of the body of the host organism or whether it enters into the body of the host organism, we have two types of parasite. Number one is ectoparasite and number two is endoparasite. So first of all, I want to tell you about ectoparasite. So those parasites that feed on the external surface of the host organisms, they are called as ectoparasites. So here student, you remember the example of lice on your hairs and ticks in case of dogs. So these ticks, they gets attached themselves with the skin of the dogs and cause irritation in to dogs. There are many marine fishes which are infested with ectoparasitic copepods. So these copepods, they generally draw nourishment. They are weakening these fishes by obtaining nutrients from their body. Yeah, student, here I have shown you the picture of another parasite, that this red and black marking beetle, and it also acts as a parasite on this host plant. Yes, student, I want to discuss the example of Cuscuta. This Cuscuta is a parasitic plant and it is generally visible growing on some hedge plants. And what it do on these plants, it cause loss of chlorophyll from the leaves of these plants. And in this way, it draws the nourishment of the host plant on which it parasitizes. And finally, the loss of chlorophyll pigment takes place and host plant, it becomes weakened and later do not involved in the process of photosynthesis. The next are endoparasites. So these endoparasites are those animals that actually enters into the body of the host organism and they start living at different sites and different organs of the host organism. It may be liver, kidney, lungs, red blood cells, etc. So the life cycle of these endoparasites, they are quite complex, more complex because of their extreme specializations. They are morphological as well as anatomical features. They are more simplified and more emphasis is on the reproductive potential. That means they have high reproductive potential. So here I have shown you two pictures. One is the example of ectoparasitism, where parasites are found outside the body of the host organism. So here so many ticks, they are attached themselves with the dog. And next is endoparasitism. So here I have shown you liver fluke, and this liver fluke, it enters into the host body and start living in a particular organ. Yes, student, now I am going to discuss with you a special case of parasitism, and that is known as brood parasitism. So what happened in this type of parasitism? The parasitic bird, it lays its egg in the nest of its host bird and let the host bird to incubate. And what happened during the course of evolution? The eggs of the parasitic birds have evolved to resemble the host egg. So detecting the foreign egg and ejecting them from the nest, it is quite difficult for the host bird. Okay, see the pictures that have shown a fight between the crow and the cuckoo. So in this way, what happened? The crow generally gave its egg in the nest of the cuckoo, and this bird later she take care of his eggs, but later she get know that these are not her eggs. It is actually the eggs of crow. Okay, student, we are going to start the next topic, and that is commensalism. So this picture is very much familiar to you. Always you see one small bird that generally follows the cows or buffaloes, and it is the picture that is generally visible to you in the village areas when you visit your villages. A student, what is commensalism? So commensalism is a type of interaction in which one species benefit, but the other species is neither harmed and nor benefited. So here I want to give you the example of orchids. Orchids, they are growing as epiphyte on the mango branch. And there are small animals called barnacles. These barnacles, they generally grow on the back of the whale, which is an aquatic mammal. And both the mango as well as the whale, they do not derive any apparent benefit. But the other species, that is orchid and the barnacle, they are benefited from them. I have already discussed the cattle and the ergot relationship. Is also a kind of commensalism. So here the cattle ergot and grazing cattle, they are in close association in the farmed village areas, and this is the classic example of commensalism. Okay, student, here I have shown you the orchid plant which is growing on the branch of the mango tree. So in this way, it is so much tightly attached itself with the branch of the mango that you are not able to get separated. The ergot always forage close to where the cattle are grazing. Why? Because the cattle, as they move up, stir up and flush out insects from the vegetation, and that otherwise might be difficult for ergot to find and catch. So then another example of commensalism is a interaction that generally found between sea anemone that has a stinging tentacles and the clownfish. So this clownfish is a very small fish. It lives inside the stinging tentacles of the sea anemone. The fish gets protection from their predators, which stay away from the stinging tentacles. And the anemone does not appear to derive any benefit by hosting the clownfish. Okay, student, here I have shown you the picture of the aquatic mammal whale, and here you can see the barnacles, these small animals, they attached themselves over the skin of the whale on her outer surface of skin. Yes, student, the next type of population interaction is mutualism. So this interaction, it confers benefits on both the interacting species. You can also give the example of symbiotic association here. So whenever you are asked to give the example, you always tell the name of lichens. So these lichens, they have an intimate mutualistic relationship between a fungus and a photosynthetic algae or a cyanobacteria. So the mycorrhiza are association which are generally found between the fungi and the roots of the higher plants. So what happened? The fungi help the plants in absorption of essential nutrients from the soil, while the plant in turn provides the fungi with energy yielding carbohydrates. Okay, student, here I have shown you the picture of a lichen growth over the tree branches and stem. Yes, mutualism is also found in case of plant-animal relationships. You have studied in chapter 2. The plants, they need the help of animals for pollinating their flowers as well as for dispersing their seeds. But these animals have to be paid fees for these services that plant expect from them. So plant generally offered rewards and fees in the form of pollen, their nectar for these pollinators. And juicy and nutritious fruits, they are also available by plant for these seed dispersers. So this plant-animal interaction, it also involves co-evolution of the mutualist. That is, the evolution of the flowers and the pollinator species, they are tightly linked with one another. So here I have shown you the mycorrhizal association between the roots of the higher plant and the fungi hybrid. Yes, student, another picture is of pollination. So here honeybee causes pollination in the sunflower species. Okay, student, I am going to give you a very interesting example of the fig trees. So in many species of the fig trees, there is a tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator species of wasp. It means that a given fig species can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and not any other species. So what happens? This female wasp uses the fruit not only as a oviposition or egg-laying site, but uses the developing seeds within the fruit for nourishing their larvae also. So the wasp pollinate the fig inflorescence while searching for suitable egg-laying sites. And what happens in return for the favor of pollination? The fig offers the wasp some of the developing seeds as food for the developing wasp larvae. So here you can see the picture. There are so many fruits of fig, and these wasps they generally present over these fig fruits. They lay their eggs in the ovary of these fig fruits, and when this pollination takes place and later the development of the fruit takes place, and at the same time the larvae of the wasp it also appear in the chamber of the ovary, and these fruits they are available for the larvae for their nourishment. Okay, student. Now I want to tell you the second very interesting example, and that is of orchids. So what are these orchids? These orchids are the plants which have beautiful flowers. They have a wide diversity of their floral patterns. So many of which have evolved to attract the insect pollinators. And their insect pollinators, they are generally the bees or the bumblebees. And these bees and bumblebees, they ensure guaranteed pollination by it. So not all the orchids, they offer rewards, but some of the orchids, they generally offer rewards to these insects. So here I am going to discuss with you a very special case of the Mediterranean orchid Ophrys. Employs sexual deceit to get pollination done by a species of bees. So what happened? One petal of its flower, it bears as an uncanny resemblance to the female of the bee in size, color, and markings. So here you can see the picture. The petal, it has same size, color, as well as marking over it, as the same markings are present in case of the female bees. So in this way, what the female partner assume that this petal is not actually the petal, but it is the male partner. So in this way, the male bee is attracted to what it perceives as a female. Okay, students. So the male bee is actually attracted toward this flower and assume that the flower petal is a female bee. And in this way, in confusion, it pseudo-copulates with the flower. And during this process, this male bee dusted with pollen from the flower. And when this same bee, it pseudo-copulates with another flower, then it will release those pollen grains over the another flower. So in this way, the pollination it takes place. So when the same bee pseudo-copulates with another, it transfers the pollen to it and thus pollinate the flower. So if the female bee's color pattern, sometimes it gets changed slightly for any reason during evolution, so pollination success that will be reduced. But it will remain normal if the orchid flower co-evolves to maintain the resemblance of its petals to this female bee. So in this way, the plants, they offer rewards and fees to these visiting animals, which are generally their pollinators, and they are so much mutually associated. They have an intimate relationship with these animals. Okay, students? So this is the last topic of our chapter. So that's all in today's lecture, student, and we also completed our chapter, chapter 14. And that is organism and population. So please read the chapter once. I'm quite hopeful that the topics will be clear to you. So have a nice day, students. Thank you.